If you're 45 or older in the United States, you already know the math doesn't work. A routine specialist visit runs $300 to $600 before insurance even gets involved. A knee replacement without coverage can hit $50,000. And even with good insurance, the deductibles, the copays, the surprise bills, the months-long wait to see a specialist, none of that disappears just because you're paying a premium every month. The average American family now spends more on health insurance premiums alone than most mortgages cost. And that's before a single visit, a single test, a single prescription enters the picture. Here's what almost nobody tells you. There are countries where the doctors are trained at the same medical schools, the hospitals carry the same international accreditation American institutions brag about, and the price for the exact same procedure is a fraction of what you'd pay at home. Not lower quality, not a gamble, just lower cost. Because the entire system isn't built around insurance company profit margins, hospital administrative bloat, or a billing structure designed to extract the maximum amount possible from every single patient interaction. These are 5 real countries where Americans are getting better care for less money, right now in 2026. And the gap isn't closing. If anything, it's widening every year. US healthcare costs keep climbing faster than inflation. Why does this gap exist at all, if the doctors and the equipment are comparable? Mostly because the underlying cost structure is completely different. American hospital pricing has to absorb enormous administrative overhead just to process the back and forth with dozens of competing insurance companies, plus malpractice insurance costs that dwarf what physicians pay almost anywhere else in the world, plus a pharmaceutical and medical device pricing system that charges Americans multiples of what the exact same drugs and implants cost just across the border. None of the countries on this list are cutting corners on training or equipment to hit these prices. They're simply operating inside healthcare systems, public, private, or hybrid, that were never built around the same financial incentives driving costs upward in the US. Country number 1, Mexico. This is the most accessible option on the list, both literally and financially. And it's becoming the default answer for Americans who can't stomach US healthcare pricing anymore, but don't want to fly across the world to get treatment. Private hospitals in cities like Mexico City, Guadalajara, Monterrey, Mérida, and Querétaro deliver care that rivals anything in the US, with many specialists trained in the United States or Europe before returning home to practice. Hospital groups like Hospital Angeles and Christus Muguerza operate modern, internationally recognized facilities across the country, and in the major expat hubs, English-speaking physicians are common enough that language barely becomes a factor. A general practitioner visit at a private clinic runs $25 to $65. A specialist consultation runs $50 to $120, compared to $300 to $600 for the same visit in the US. Dental work is its own category of absurd savings. A crown that costs hundreds of dollars in the US runs roughly $250 to $500 in Mexico, and teeth cleaning runs around $28. Surgeries are where the gap becomes impossible to ignore. Procedures that cost 50 to 70% less than their American equivalent. A hip replacement that runs $40,000 or more without insurance in the US can cost closer to $12,000 in a private Mexican hospital, with the same implant brands and the same surgical techniques. Diagnostic tests. The blood work and imaging that quietly rack up hundreds of dollars on a US bill often cost a third less in Mexico, and a comprehensive lab panel can run under $55. For legal residents, there's also IMSS, Mexico's public healthcare system, with premiums based on age, somewhere around $63 a month if you're in your 50s, $89 a month in your 60s, $93 a month for 70 to 79-year-olds, covering hospitalizations and major procedures as a low-cost safety net, even if you primarily use private care for day-to-day visits. Most expats run a hybrid approach, paying into IMSS for catastrophic protection while using private clinics for routine care because of the shorter wait times and English-speaking staff. The math works out simply. You pay $500 to $700 a year for IMSS enrollment, and you use it as the backstop for the kind of bill that could otherwise wipe out a retirement account, while paying out of pocket for the small stuff because it's already cheap enough that insurance barely matters. The honest caveat: IMSS wait times for specialist appointments can run weeks to months, and quality varies significantly outside the major cities. In smaller expat towns like San Miguel de Allende or Ajijic, the public facilities are noticeably thinner than what you'd find in Mexico City or Monterrey. Most long-term residents treat IMSS as insurance for the worst-case scenario, not as their everyday healthcare provider. And the smart move is choosing your city based partly on what's available a short drive away if something serious comes up. Mexico also has the advantage of sheer scale when it comes to medical tourism specifically. The country ranks as the world's second most popular destination for medical tourism overall, which means the infrastructure for foreign patients, English-speaking coordinators, hospitals that routinely process international insurance paperwork, clinics built around serving exactly this kind of patient, already exists at a maturity level most other countries on this list are still catching up to. For Americans living in border states or anywhere in the Southwest, that maturity translates into something even more practical. You can drive to a major Mexican hospital for a procedure and be home recovering on your own couch the same week, without the jet lag or the international flight that every other country on this list requires. Country number 2, Costa Rica. This is the country that built universal healthcare into its constitution, and the public system, known locally as the Caja, covers everything, including pre-existing conditions, from day one, with zero copays once you're enrolled. Every legal resident is required to pay into the Caja, with premiums based on declared income, somewhere between 7 and 11% of that income, and in exchange, you get full coverage for doctor visits, hospital stays, surgeries, and prescriptions at public facilities. No per-visit charges, no deductibles eating into a procedure that's supposedly covered. The trade-off is wait times for non-emergency procedures, which is why most expats layer private insurance on top, running $150 to $400 a month depending on age and coverage level, giving them access to private hospitals like CIMA in Escazú, Clínica Bíblica in San Jose and Santa Ana, and Hospital Metropolitano, all staffed by physicians trained in the US and Europe. Out of pocket, a private doctor visit runs $50 to $110, and a specialist consultation through these private networks runs $80 to $120. A knee replacement in a private Costa Rican hospital runs around $12,000, compared to over $50,000 for the same procedure in the US without insurance. Monthly prescriptions for common conditions like high blood pressure or high cholesterol run $20 to $50 out of pocket at a local pharmacy, a fraction of what the same medications cost at a US pharmacy counter, even with a copay. The system here is genuinely dual track by design, and this is the detail most cost of living videos skip past. You keep the Caja because it covers pre-existing conditions that most private international plans exclude for the first 12 to 24 months, which matters enormously for anyone over 45 who's already managing something. High blood pressure, diabetes, a prior surgery, the exact conditions that get excluded or surcharged everywhere else. And you add private insurance for speed and comfort, for the days when you don't want to wait in line at a public clinic for a sinus infection. It's the rare setup where the public option and the private option are both legitimately good, instead of one being a consolation prize for people who can't afford the other. Most expats describe it as the most peace-of-mind healthcare arrangement of anywhere they've lived, precisely because there's no scenario where a major diagnosis means scrambling to find coverage that will actually pay out. There's also a quieter benefit that doesn't show up in any cost breakdown, which is just how normal this all feels once you're inside the system. Costa Rica has one of the largest, longest established American expat communities in Latin America, which means the entire healthcare conversation, finding a doctor, navigating residency requirements for the Caja, choosing between competing private insurers, has already been figured out by tens of thousands of people before you, with active online communities and English-speaking facilitators who walk new arrivals through every step. You're not improvising a healthcare strategy from scratch. You're following a well-worn path that other Americans your exact age have already tested. Country number 3, Thailand, and specifically Bangkok's Bumrungrad International Hospital, one of the most recognized medical tourism destinations on the planet. Bumrungrad has treated more international patients than almost any hospital in Southeast Asia, with over 500,000 international patients passing through its doors, 45 specialized centers, around 1,200 doctors on staff out of nearly 5,000 total employees, and accreditation from the Joint Commission International, the same gold standard certification American hospitals use to prove their own quality. It was the first hospital in Asia to receive that JCI accreditation, and it's picked up additional specialized certifications since, including dedicated programs for stroke care and heart attack response that match protocols used at top American medical centers. This isn't a budget alternative, it's a hospital built specifically to handle complex cases for patients flying in from around the world, with an oncology center staffed by 30 specialized cancer doctors who train and collaborate directly with the American Board of Medical Oncology. The price difference on major procedures is where Thailand makes its case impossible to ignore. Heart bypass surgery at Bumrungrad runs $15,000 to $25,000, and valve replacement runs $18,000 to $30,000, compared to $70,000 to $200,000 for the same procedures in the United States. That's not a 30% discount. That's a fraction of the American price for surgery performed by surgeons with the same training, using the same equipment, at a hospital with one of the highest concentrations of JCI accreditation anywhere in the region. For patients who don't need full open heart surgery, Bumrungrad also offers transcatheter aortic valve implantation, a less invasive alternative that speeds recovery and reduces complications. The kind of advanced option you'd expect at a major U.S. cardiac center, not a hospital halfway around the world. Routine visits are equally affordable relative to the U.S., and the hospital's International Patient Center handles everything from translation to visa assistance to airport pickup, because the entire business model is built around foreign patients flying in specifically for treatment, not around walk-in locals. Beyond cardiac care, the hospital runs dedicated centers for orthopedics, pediatrics, and ophthalmology, including laser vision correction using some of the newest available technology, plus a children's center with a well baby clinic for expat families who end up staying long enough to need pediatric care too. The honest version of this option. Thailand makes the most sense for major elective procedures, heart surgery, joint replacement, complex diagnostics, where the savings are enormous enough to justify the flight and the recovery time abroad. It's less practical as your weekly go-to doctor unless you're already living there long-term, which is exactly why most Americans use Thailand for the big-ticket procedures and handle routine care wherever they happen to be living the rest of the year. Country number 4, Malaysia. Specifically Penang, which has spent the last decade building itself into one of Asia's most established medical tourism hubs, backed directly by the Malaysian government through an agency called the Malaysia Healthcare Travel Council, and supported locally by the Penang Center for Medical Tourism, a government initiative built specifically to make the entire process easier for foreign patients. Hospitals here, Gleneagles Penang, Pantai Hospital, Island Hospital, are part of major regional healthcare groups under the IHH Healthcare umbrella, and they hold the same JCI accreditation as Bumrungrad in Thailand. Gleneagles Penang alone has been operating since 1973, originally as Penang Medical Center, with 16 resident specialists trained in the UK, the US, and Australia, plus a cardiac program running 2 dedicated cardiac operating theaters and 2 cardiac catheterization labs, handling close to 2,000 invasive cardiac procedures a year, along with more than 3,500 adult cardiac surgeries and over 4,000 pediatric cardiac surgeries over the hospital's history. Consultation fees at private hospitals like Pantai run roughly 200 to 400 Malaysian ringgit, somewhere around $45 to $90, depending on the specialist and the type of consultation. Full diagnostic health screening packages, the kind that catch early-stage issues like high cholesterol, diabetes, or an early-stage tumor before they become emergencies, run 50 to 70% less than equivalent packages in Singapore, the US, or the UK, while using the same diagnostic imaging technology and the same screening protocols. Beyond Penang, Kuala Lumpur and Johor Bahru have built out their own competing medical tourism infrastructure, with hospital chains like KPJ and additional Gleneagles locations offering robotic surgery and precision radiotherapy at prices that remain a fraction of Western equivalents. What makes Malaysia stand out from Thailand isn't dramatically cheaper pricing. The two countries are fairly close on cost for comparable procedures. It's accessibility and predictability. English is widely spoken in Malaysian hospitals as a matter of course, not as a special accommodation for foreigners. The government actively regulates and promotes the medical tourism sector through official channels, rather than leaving it to individual hospitals to market themselves. And the country positions itself as a calmer, more administratively smooth experience for patients who want excellent care without navigating things entirely on their own. If Thailand is the destination for a major, planned surgery, Malaysia is increasingly the destination for the diagnostic workups, full body screenings, and mid level procedures that fall in between routine care and a full operation, with a level of government backed infrastructure built specifically to make foreign patients feel taken care of, from the moment they land to the moment they fly home. Quite a few American medical travelers actually combine the two countries entirely, flying into Kuala Lumpur or Penang for an annual comprehensive health screening, the kind that catches problems early, and then only making the trip to Bangkok for an actual procedure if the screening turns up something that needs treating. It's a strategy that effectively splits the cost of staying healthy from the cost of getting treated, using whichever country does each job better, rather than committing to one hospital system for everything. Country number 5, Portugal. And this one looks completely different from the first 4 because it's not built around medical tourism at all. It's built around actually moving there. Portugal's National Health Service, the SNS, the Serviço Nacional de Saúde, is funded through general taxation and available to legal residents, including Americans on a D7 visa, a golden visa, or other long-term residency status. And the World Health Organization consistently ranks it among the top healthcare systems in Europe, regularly placing inside the global top 20. Once registered with your local health center and issued a numero de utente, your personal healthcare ID number, a basic doctor visit through the public system runs around €5, with emergency visits running 14 to 20 euros. And that's before factoring in that many services are entirely free for children, pregnant women, and seniors over 65, the exact group most likely to be watching a video like this one. The catch with the SNS is the same catch you'll find in most universal systems. GP availability in popular expat areas can be thin. In some regions, newly arrived residents wait a long time just to get assigned a family doctor in the first place. And non-urgent specialist referrals can take months rather than weeks. The government has acknowledged this directly, and Portugal's 2026 healthcare reforms specifically target the problem with an expanded doctor hiring program aimed at reducing those wait times, along with an overhaul of the National Emergency Medical Response System. That's exactly why most American expats run the same playbook they use elsewhere on this list. Register with the SNS for the safety net and the free or near-free baseline care, particularly valuable for anything catastrophic. Then add private insurance running 30 to 150 euros a month for faster access to private hospitals like CUF, Luciadas, and Trofa Saúde, where English-speaking staff and short wait times are standard. A private GP visit runs 50 to 100 euros. A private specialist runs 60 to 150 euros. And even paying entirely out of pocket without any insurance at all, healthcare in Portugal runs 70 to 80% less than equivalent American costs for comparable care. Dental coverage sits outside the main public system except in emergencies, so most residents budget separately for it. But even private dental work in Portugal remains dramatically cheaper than the same procedure back home. Most U.S. health insurance plans, including Medicare, simply don't follow you to Portugal, which is why getting properly set up with either the SNS, private coverage, or both isn't optional. It's the first administrative task on the list after securing residency. What makes Portugal different from the others on this list is that you're not flying in for a single procedure. You're building an entire life around a healthcare system that happens to also be excellent, layered on top of a country with reliable infrastructure, EU standard consumer protections, mild weather, and a cost of living that makes the entire equation work without feeling like you're constantly calculating savings against risk. It's the option for someone who wants to stop thinking about healthcare as a recurring financial emergency and start thinking about it as something that's simply handled, the way it should have been all along. And if you're not ready to relocate anywhere on this list, but you're staring down a major procedure quoted at American prices right now, it's worth knowing that you don't have to choose between the two extremes of paying the full US price or uprooting your entire life. A growing number of Americans are using these countries for exactly one trip, the surgery itself, recovery included, then flying home to the life they already have. It's not a decision to make lightly, and it's not right for every procedure or every person. But for the right surgery at the right hospital, it's become a completely mainstream option, rather than the fringe idea it was even a decade ago. So here's the recap. Mexico gives you proximity and a hybrid public-private system that works as a genuine long-term solution, not just a one-time procedure destination, with the comfort of being a short flight from family back home. Costa Rica gives you constitutionally guaranteed universal coverage that even covers pre-existing conditions from day one, the single biggest gap in most private international insurance. Thailand gives you world-class surgical outcomes on major procedures at a fraction of the American price tag, backed by one of the most internationally recognized hospitals in Asia. Malaysia gives you the same caliber of care with government-backed infrastructure built specifically around making the process smooth for foreign patients, with English spoken as a default rather than an accommodation. And Portugal gives you a complete healthcare system to build a life around, not just a destination to fly into for treatment, layered into one of the more livable countries in Europe. None of this means American healthcare is simple to walk away from, and none of it means you should book a flight for major surgery without doing real research first. But the pattern across every single one of these countries is the same. Trained physicians, many with Western credentials, internationally recognized hospitals, modern equipment that matches or exceeds what you'd find at a typical American facility, and prices that exist in a completely different universe from what Americans are quoted at home for identical care. The quality gap that used to justify the price difference largely doesn't exist anymore, at least not at the institutions named in this video. And more Americans are figuring that out every single year, which is exactly why medical tourism and healthcare-driven relocation keep climbing as a share of why people leave the US in the first place. A few honest notes before you start researching flights or visas. Medicare does not follow you abroad in almost any circumstance. So if you're on Medicare and considering a move, talk to a financial advisor about whether to keep paying your Part B premiums even while living overseas, because gaps in enrollment can trigger permanent penalties if you ever need to re-enroll back in the US later. Most international and local private insurance plans exclude pre-existing conditions for the first 12 to 24 months of a new policy, which is exactly why countries like Costa Rica, where the public system covers pre-existing conditions immediately, becomes so valuable for people with ongoing health issues rather than a clean slate. And if you're traveling specifically for a single procedure rather than relocating, always verify the hospital's current accreditation status directly. Get a written, itemized cost estimate before you book anything, and budget for the deposit most private hospitals require upfront for any major procedure, because pricing can shift year to year. And not every clinic marketing itself as a medical tourism destination meets the same standard as the major accredited hospitals named in this video. All right, everyone, that's today's video. If you've used healthcare in any of these countries yourself, drop your experience in the comments. It genuinely helps other people in the same situation make a more informed decision before they book anything. Have a great day, and be nice to each other.